else, someone over here on this side, who had experience with an earthquake or a tremor?
Yeah.
Right here.
I've lived with California for 32 years. So
Okay.
I know the experience of
Yeah,
it.
forget you. I was in my office. I've lived in Sevier County for 12 years. I came there from Utah County, where I lived, Utah County. I worked at Sandy City at the time, but I was in my office and just felt like the buildings, I would have moved it up an inch or so and then set it back down. I guess that what I think it was. And I was in my chair, it's just kind of like a little roller coaster right there for a second. So I went to a neighboring office and I said, "Did you feel that too?" They said, "Yeah, we did." Our eyes are all kind of big and wide, and it's an unsettling experience, isn't it? It takes you a second to realize what's happening there and to kind of keep your wits, your orientation about what's happening. But when that happened, the first thing I thought about was the building. So I would check a couple of things. Back in, we remodeled our county building and finished it in '07. And Johnny, is our building fire still the largest USIP claim?
No, you've been beat out since then.
Only the second highest. But we had a building renovation going on, and we had a subcontractor cutting a beam, and he caught the plenum area, the space between this false ceiling and the roof, caught it on fire. In about 30 seconds, fire was throughout the building because there was so much dust that had collected in that area. And so I was involved in the remodeling of that building, and so I knew where all the utilities was, and so after that little tremor, I was running downstairs and checking some stuff to see if we were okay, making sure there wasn't a gas break or something along those lines. So it's an interesting subject. I think when I mentioned the most dangerous event in Salt Lake or Utah is an earthquake, I decided that the second most dangerous one is when the next round of ammunition shelving is stopped at your favorite gun shop. You can't find it. Word gets out that there's 22 long rifles on the shelves. You better watch out. You get stampeded. All right, let me tell you a bit about myself. As I said, I work for Sevier County, work with the commissioners of the county administration. I have a colleague of Dean here, and so it's good to see him. And I've got colleagues Mike Hyde from Sevier County's jail facility, and John Burton, who runs our facilities there. So it's good to see them there. I'll ask Mike to jump in on this presentation. But I graduated from BYU in public administration. I worked for 5 years at Orem City, and then I was at Sandy City for about 4 years after that. And in 2000, went to Sevier County, and haven't looked back. We enjoy it there, and look forward to being there for a long time. I've had a number of different assignments with Sevier County. The commissioners are starting to just kind of throw more odd things at me. And what I'm going to go over today is one of those specialized assignments or projects that here you take care of it. And so I'll do that. Funding for inspections and improvements. Wow. That's a subject exciting. We're going to try and make this fun and enjoyable. I'm going to go through a little bit of what we did in the last year and a half or so in Sevier County, and then describe some options that may be available for you on what's next there. Here's our area. What we did, and I think why I was invited to participate in this, is we removed and replaced 15 rooftop HVAC units in our county jail building. And when was that building constructed?
94.
94. So this is basically original units on that building, and 15 years roughly, and their useful life is starting to go out. How many of you in your counties actually have a replacement fund for facilities and equipment and things like that? Okay, not a surprise. We remodeled our building. We put about a $60,000 roof on that as part of the remodel. And we have we have a guarantee, a warranty of that for 25 years, but it's supposed to last like 30 or 35. So if we were smart, what would we be doing right now? Start putting the money away, because we know in 25 years, good round number, we're going to have to pay. How much do you think to replace that roof, that lining? Probably double it. Yeah, probably double. So we should be setting aside, at least half of that now, so that when we come up with it, we don't do it. So that's really the first suggestion I can offer to any county. This is not a surprise for anybody. It's just good management. Just to begin setting aside some funds every year in the budget process again, either a third or half or something like that, so that when that roof does need to be replaced, or those HVAC units need to be replaced, we have some funds to do it. We also removed and replaced the water heating system in the same building. And I'll have a photograph of that here in a second. We were given a grant for this project, and we were awarded $253,000. I'll go into details here in a second. And we ended up using the 239 to actually make this happen. And we used ARA funding. Anybody remember what that stands for? That's the one. It was, I think, when President Obama was first put into office, he worked with Congress and was able to get, what was the billions? About 900 billion. I think that was the number. Stimulus money. And what happened there is part of that was for energy efficiency projects throughout the country. Each state was awarded some funds. Utah got some of those. And how we found out about it is two sources. One, the 6-County Association of Governments that we belong to got word of it and just simply sent out an email and then mentioned in a couple of meetings that these funds were available. And then State Senator Okerlund, Ralph Okerlund from our area, he also heard about it, so he made some phone calls to let counties know that these funds were available. And at the time, I wasn't aware of these HVAC units, so we just checked with our departments in the county. And the sheriff says, hey, yeah, we were starting to make repairs on our HVAC units of the jail building. They're 15 years old, and that might be something that's applicable. And, let's see.
Is that funding still available?
No. It's not. And I'll get to that in a second. When I found out this topic, I thought, is there a joke I can tell with funding facilities, or is there a video out there about funding facilities? There's just nothing on YouTube. So what we got stuck with was a photograph of a local contractor replacing, I think replaced 15 or 16, was that the number I gave you? Rooftop units. It turned out to be kind of an interesting experience. As some of you may know, it's not just a matter of pulling off an old one and putting on a new one. But it was just a simple, the concept was simple, but it turned out to be a little bit more involved. Okay, let me go into the, this here is the water heater. This is the new one. Sorry for the bad picture. I just needed to document for the state folks administering this grant that we had indeed put in a new water heater unit.
These are continuous water heaters?
Mike?
What's
Continuous
that?
water heater?
Do what?
Is it a continuous water heater?
No, it's on demand.
On demand, yeah.
It went from 60% efficiency to 90 with the new one.
The space where this was, I mean, it was huge, wasn't it, Mike? I mean, it's like a couple of these tables high, and that's where the 6 of you were sitting around. It's just this huge old-style water heater, right? It's a water tank.
Yeah, those old ones, those old water heaters are $10,000 each, or $8,000 to $10,000 each.
And
Yeah,
and Mike works. This is a local contractor again. That's where I'm in this little unit, and I saw that. I said, no way. I saw it. I said, there's no way you're going to be able to keep the inmates and the other hot water demands in the building with that little thing. Does it work?
Works well.
But the efficiency ratings were, say, went from what?
60% to 90%.
90%. So, and that was the purpose of these fundings, was to make buildings more energy efficient.
And walk-in bar boilers are very excellent boilers too.
What was that again?
That walk-in bar boiler that you put in, I've both poured in my county in the last 3 years, and very excellent boilers.
Okay, and that's the brand that we used.
Yeah.
The thing with the ARA funding, well, I think I'll get to this in a second. It had its own complications. The financing this particular project, the county paid for the project and then reimbursed. And part of the stipulations of this funding was that the ability to track the dollars to make sure they were spent where they were supposed to be spent for, how they were spent, and so forth. And so we had just a lot of documentation that we had to submit, keep track of, so that we could, say where every penny went, how it was spent. Program documentation had to be satisfied, or else. Or else what, do you think? No reimbursement. And so the state folks, they were very good about it, but they made this very clear.
You said this was in the public safety building there?
A jail building. It's the building that houses the sheriff's office, the jail, highway patrol's in there, adult parole and probation, is that right? Who else is in there? That's it. County attorney office is in there.
How many inmates?
How many inmates?
120 to 140.
So that's the building, but the documentation was the crazy part. Again, just very straightforward. A lot of photographs. What we were doing with this particular program. And I'll get to this in a second. But you had Buy American provisions. Everything had to be. Yeah, I'll get to that in a second. That's my one joke of this whole thing. I haven't told the joke yet. Some administrative costs were reimbursed. I was able to keep track of some of my time and get it out as reimbursement with ARA. And then we had to include some match money, so we agreed to throw in $15,000 for that. And on this project, admittedly, I was naive on this one. I thought replacing these HVAC units was going to be very simple. You take the old ones off, you get some new ones on. And so I went and started the bidding process and had some contractors come in for a pre-bid meeting just to look at the building and see what was involved. And they started asking me some questions, and I didn't know the answers. How air moved through the units and a few other things, and I realized, oops, I made a mistake. So we just canceled that process, and I went and found an engineer. And I don't mind making statements about engineering firms and letting them know which ones do well. We hired Van Borum and Frank out of Salt Lake. They were doing some work for the school district in our area. So the guy was down in our area, brought him over and says, "Can you help me with this?" Because I realized I was in over my head. And we hired this engineering firm, and he went through and did the analysis for all the units, found out their operating parameters, how many tons of air they could push through, BTUs and heating and cooling systems and so forth. And then what I did realize, go back here, I think this is taking the old units off. And is anybody familiar with HVAC units? Can you just take an old one off and put another one on the same footprint?
No.
No, see, what are they called again? Curb adapters, that's it, I forgot what they are. The engineer had to design an adapter to take it from this footprint, this configuration, into a new unit. And so once we selected the manufacturer of the new units, what did we go with? Do you remember, Mike?
I can't remember.
It wasn't Train.
That looks like your unit.
No, our contractor didn't like it.
That looks like.
I think it's a York.
York.
But anyway, he had to order out of a company in Kentucky the adapter to put on top of this fixed part of this thing here, so that it would fit the new unit that we put on. I had no idea that stuff was going on. So that was one of my lessons learned that I'll talk about here, was just make sure, for us, hired engineers, we knew what they were doing, and so we could
What
do
was
it.
the engineer, by the way?
I use about $15,000 to do that kind of work. Let's see. There we go. So back to that program documentation. For our funding source, that was very important. I just kept track of everything. Back in my office, I've got a red binder, and it had to be red. I wouldn't let it be any other color. It is a red binder. And on our final inspection with the state folks, again, they were very good. They were being very careful. They had to be, because they were kind of under the same gun as I was. You have documentation that don't get reimbursed. And so they said, "Do you have your red binder?" And I pulled it out and proudly held up my red binder and did it that way. For us, we had to use, because because it was a grant, we had to use some of the standard granting procedures. How many of you are involved in the grant writing process or application process for funding? Whether it's facilities or new construction, so you've got some responsibility there. So some of these may not make sense to you, and that's okay if you consider yourself lucky. But for those of us that are on occasion apply for grants or matching funds or things like that, these mean something. The DUNS number is every county, every municipality, government agency, private sector organization has a DUNS number. I had to become the AOR, the Authorized Organizational Representative, so that I could make grant applications for Sevier County. The CCR is something else we had to go register for. I can't remember what that means right now. I was hoping somebody
That's
here.
where register contractors. of the
Yeah,
county government.
you can register as a contractor, you have to apply, you get approved. That expires every so often, and ours was about to expire, so we had to
Getting
go.
replaced by a system called SAMS.
Sam's?
SAMS, S-A-M-S.
But if you've got somebody in your organization that usually works with grants, these things should make sense to them. But in my case, grants thought, yeah, we'll go to this website a little bit later on and explain to you what it is, how it works. But I had to make sure we had a DUNS number. I worked with our clerk auditor, Steve Wall, and made sure we had the DUNS number. He had to do the CCR for us and things like that. Davis Bacon Wages, this is my one joke, the root canal. You would rather have a root canal than do Davis Bacon. Does anybody mess with Davis Bacon? It's not fun. You know, it's doable, but it's just kind of a pain. What that means is it's a law passed in the 40s. It was quite, maybe the 60s, somewhere in there. It was to make sure that people who worked on a federally funded project were being paid prevailing wages for their type of work on that project. So in our case, we were using mostly electricians. We had some plumbing background as well. And so there is a wage scale for plumbers and electricians in each area of the country. And I had to go get what that scale is and then include that in the bidding process so that the contractors bid on it knew that they had to pay at least within that range the electricians and plumbers or any other skilled tradesmen that were involved in this project. You know, we were getting HVAC, so we had electricians, plumbers, and then some sheet metal type work that was done. And then the contractor, this is where it's kind of a pain, has to pay the employees every week. It can't be on it every month or every 2 weeks, and it has to be every week. You have to get copies of the check, copies of the timesheets. There's a form you fill out by the contractor, the company, saying that these are valid numbers, we respond to these regulations appropriately. I had to get copies of that every week, and then had to submit those to the state folks so that they could review those and make sure that prevailing wages were being paid. Now, we were lucky. We had a local contractor, Blake Electric, there in Richfield, and they've worked through projects like this before. They had a wonderful office manager, Jeanette. If I wasn't married, I'd marry Jeanette. She knew about the forms. She knew what was involved. She knew how to fill them out, the weekly thing, and so she was able to take the burden from me of a lot of that paperwork to make sure it was done properly. Those forms were inspected. We still had to go back and correct a couple of things that we were caught on. And then I had to go, at some point, interview the employees. There were 3 guys out there from Blake Electric. I had to meet with them and says, hey, are you getting paid? And how much are you getting paid? And you have access to a restroom. Are you happy? Did you take your wife on a date last week? I didn't get into that stuff, of course, but fortunately, I know these guys, and so I was able to visit with them and just mark off that I had met with them, documented that interview, and made sure they were part of it. So now for our project, it was easy because it was how long was it, Mike? 4 to 6 weeks, somewhere in that neighborhood.
About 6 weeks.
To get it done. Some of the jurisdictions in Utah that use these ARA funds were like a 1.5-year projects, and they had to do this for a 1.5 years. I really felt for most people, but with any federal or state program funding, you're going to have that kind of paperwork issue that you have to deal with. And so you just accept the facts, grit your teeth, and get in and get it done, and make sure that everything's covered. Again, the Buy American for materials. I was contacting, it was Crane that we bought, contacted the company in Kentucky again, just getting documentation from them about, yes, everything was made in the United States. Again, if we missed that, just even inadvertently, we wouldn't get reimbursed for those things. Each of those units, by the time we we're done, ran up $15,000, $16,000 per unit by the time we ran it. So they were kind of expensive. I had to document, I think I got a photograph of this. This is another one of those exciting moments. Yeah, here we go. Exciting moments in this presentation where I had a photograph again of the guys. And well, what's going on here? Nitrogen system, getting rid of the coolant in these units. They were certified to do this. They have the proper equipment. So I went down and said, hey, when you guys are doing this, give me a call. People do not give me a call. And went down, took a picture of them clearing it out. And what was interesting is these guys are electricians. The price of copper was really high at the time. What do you think they did with these 60 units? They stripped it. They took every inch of wire out of those units. And so the only thing that was left was that shell. And we have a metal scrapper, salvage operation there in Surrey County. So everything really nothing went to landfill, everything was recycled, and that was one of the objectives of the program was to have that done. I posted employee notices, so employees knew their rights. That typical stuff you see in the lounge. They came down and took a picture that had been posted somewhere near the work site, so that it had been done. Again, not a big deal, but it's just something else that you have to take care of. We did have state contracts, and that was easy because our county attorney was comfortable with state contracts. And then I was talking to Dean during the breaks, reminded me of this, is make sure your general contractor has insurance. So that if anything goes wrong, like they kept your building on fire, that they're responsible for that.
Well, not only insurance, but you have to make sure that their insurance is valid. Sometimes they've got a claim book, and if you file one more claim, they're not covering you.
Okay, good point, thank you. Federal assurances, there are a lot of things in the contracts that we had to be aware of. That Sevier County hadn't been disbarred from doing things with the federal government. We were not going to use the funds to lobby Congress. Have you even been through those things? There's like a half dozen different things that you assure that you're not going to do and that you're not, defaulting on any debt. Lessons we learned on this is reading the fine print. The hire the engineer part again. Make sure you've got people that know what they're doing. And for me, that's what saved the project is instead of me trying to guess how to make it happen. We got the engineer involved. We asked lots of questions. More than once I made a trip to Salt Lake to visit with the state folks administering these grant funds to make sure I was understanding it properly. The last thing I wanted to do was go into a commission meeting one Monday afternoon and say, Commissioners, I'm sorry, but can you please come up with $239,000 because I forgot to check a box. And so I asked a lot of questions, and then again, just photographed everything. All right, let's get to this part now. And I've got a handout of what I'm about to show you. Funding projects. The USDA has a program, and again, I'm going to hand out so you don't need to scribble notes. USDA has a program called Community Facilities. It's meant for more rural areas. You might guess a large majority of you in the room here from those rural areas, but USDA has some pretty liberal guidelines on what's rural, so it never hurts to ask on that one. Another one that we ended up using was the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grants, the Department of Energy. I didn't spell that right. And that program, I think, is still in place. Again, I've got a handout on it. You can go there and start checking to see if that may be something that works. Some of you may be familiar with the Community Development Block Grants. It's federal money that comes to cities and counties throughout the state of Utah. Depending on your size is how you will determine how you access those funds. But it can be used for a number of different items and projects and issues so that you can use those funds for your particular needs. The DOE sponsors that program, but we end up using the ARA funds, but it's the same concept as, we've got energy efficiency, you've got a project, let's see if they match. There's the Utah Office of Energy Development, and that's, I think I gave you the right number. double check that. Yeah, that should do it, that's the main number. When we did our program, it was called the State Energy Office. They're the ones that administered those ARPA funds. They've now changed the Utah Office of Energy Development. Just before my presentation, I was able to get a hold of my contact, Lara Emery. Great person to work with. Really good folks. Had a good experience with them. And I says, is ARPA funds still around? She says, no, the grant money's gone. She says, but they do have a revolving loan fund program now that's available for facilities upgrades and things like that. She says it used to be at a 0% interest. She said now that it's an interest-bearing program. She said around 2%. So it's not a bad funding mechanism if your organization, your county, or whatever you are associated with today needs some funding. Give that number a call. Lara Emery, her last name is spelled E-M-O-R-Y, and she can put you in touch with the programs that were there. But the grant money's gone. You know, who knows? It could come back. Community development block grants. This is Keith Heaton is the person to call there. That office is now a division in the Department of Workforce Services. And I forgot to throw Keith's phone number. No, it's actually not on here. Keith's number is, on the very last sheet of this one. I've put a little star by his name.
That's just for something like that.
No, Keith administers the CDG statewide. Now, for some cities and counties in Utah, they're what's called entitlement cities, or entitlement counties. Any of you belong to one of those? Where because of the demographics of that community, you just automatically get CDBG funds every year. Now, for those that are not, you have to apply for it. Keith works with most programs. The other one, the grants.gov. Let's see that. What we're going to do, I'm going to show you this here real quick. Has anyone had occasion to use grants.gov or subscribe to it like that? So we've got one person down here. I think you were with the health department, is that correct? Is it Laura? Guessing the name. Okay. Sorry. This is where a lot of federal agencies now, if not all of them, will require someone to apply for a grant. I'm just going to go on here and apply for grants. Where's my search? We're going to go to a search. Find grant options here. That's what we're just going to do a basic search. So I'm going to cover energy efficiency. Spell that right. And what they have is 279 things that respond to that. And then, this is where your detective work starts coming in, and you start just doing a quick scan of the agency. And some of these you can quickly see, oh, this doesn't apply to us. Because it's the Golden Field Office, I think that has to do with something in California's Conservation Innovation Grant. And just off you go. You can see just a large number, variety of federal agencies are involved in this. It's just, depending on the facility, if your facility houses a health office, for example, there may be something to help health offices with energy efficiency programs. Anyway, just start going, let me hand this out. Let's see how it goes back. These are double-sided, so there's stuff on the I'll highlight a couple things on this one. Almost there. This is a gorgeous day apple, by the way. Tomorrow's supposed to be even better. So you all get tomorrow off. You can give them my name, commissioners, and say, Malcolm said it was fine. I'll be glad to take those phone calls. Run interference for you. Yeah. 555. What is it? No, this is BR 549. Is that it? That'll age some of us in here. BR 549. Where's that come from? I was a kid watching that show. I loved it. You younger guys, you just culturally starved. If you haven't seen Hee Haw. Fun show. USDA, there's the community facilities towards the bottom third of that page, talks about it. The next sheet over, the back side of that is the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant Program. Again, I believe Department of Energy. But you can obviously just get on your browser and do a search on that program. The third page, the second sheet, that was the list of jurisdictions in Utah that received ARA funding, or Energy Efficient Conservation Block Grants. And do not contact Jason Berry at that phone number. I called it just to make sure it was current. I'm glad I did. I would have been a little bit embarrassed if I gave you a phone number. It was inaccurate. It is inaccurate. And so the number that I gave you up there earlier, Alaire Emery's at 538-8732, was it? That's the number you can call, and just to find out about that program. But that's, you can see a lot of places in Utah have taken advantage of that program. What I really want to point out is this Energy Star one, with the icon in the upper left-hand corner. That one there. This is a search I did just yesterday. And that's where I would begin searching. Again, if this isn't a part of your normal responsibilities and duties in your assignments, hopefully you have somebody in your county or city or jurisdiction that is familiar with this, and just throw this out and say, hey, could you start researching this for us and see what you can come up with. But this one lists out different agencies for funding opportunities for energy efficiency. There may be something there. I didn't print this off. You'll see state residential energy efficiency loan programs. You know, go to that place, find the Utah office. Again, it's probably the reference I gave up to you earlier. Call them. This is what you're intended in doing. They can probably be the best source of quick information for you. This other one, this last sheet, this DSIRE Solar, it talks about a program in Utah. I don't know if it's still available. It looked like it was designed more for school districts. A state loan program. I don't know if it was. It's been granted. It's been a while ago. And then the last sheet again is this one here with Keith Eaton's phone number on it. My guess is because of the interest in renewable energy or green energy in this country, that more funding will be available for this. It's just a matter of doing the research and tracking it down and finding it. Okay, there you go, there's the federal sources we talked about, state one. I think that's the end of my slides. So in our case, we just kind of fell into it. So we found out about the program, made the application, was able to get it. We did throw in the 15,000 match to just help our case, you know, show that the state folks that were willing to throw some of our own money into it. And that amount wasn't a difficult sum for us, so that was easy to do. And I say we leveraged that 15,000, took it to 239. The water heater, one thing I forgot to mention there, was not part of the original project. When I was there at the county building checking on some stuff, I noticed the contractor in another part of the building. I says, "What are you guys doing?" He says, "Well, we're replacing a water heater." And you know, the light went off, and so I contacted the lair at the state, and I says, "Hey, we've got this going on. Can we make it a part of the project and get reimbursed for this?" And so we amended our contract. It met the criteria. We're replacing an old inefficient unit with a new efficient. They said yes. And so at that point, it just became a documentation exercise. And so I worked with the sheriff's office, worked with Mike here to give me all the paperwork, took photographs, did all this sort of stuff. Got the documentation from the contractor on Davis Bacon, and had another mini root canal, and got reimbursed for that project.
Just a question, when you amended the contract, did you have to increase your match?
No, that was the other nice thing, is it's the HVAC units weren't so much that it was going to burn up the whole dollar amount. What we initially intended, and what we wanted to do, is to try and put solar panels on top of our county administration building as a demonstration. In the county of, showing that this can work type of thing. But the HVAC project came in more expensive than we anticipated. And so, but this water heater replacement fit just right, and it was an easy sell. It fit the program, so it was really easy for them to say, let's go ahead and do it. And so that was another 29,000 that would have come out of regular county revenues, budgets, but we were able to get reimbursed for it completely.
I just remember that I'm doing the same thing you guys are doing. I'm getting upfront to do that.
Do you need a consultant?
Yes. Right now I need a root canal, I think. I'm going through all what you're going through here with all this. Because there's other things that get involved with each system that you're doing. Like with the water heaters, the continuous water heaters that you do. In our system, we have a pump that pumps,
Circulating more water.
and you can't do that on this, otherwise the water heater's running all the time.
Oh, okay.
So, and it has to be mixed water that goes into the jail cells, because they have push buttons, and they can only use push buttons, and so.
They obviously don't
And
control
so,
temperatures.
yeah, and so we can't run our water, that wouldn't be efficient if we ran that all the time. But,
You got a holding tank? Is there just the one gel?
no, we've got
I think it's
on water heaters.
yours.
We got like 4 or 5 huge water heaters.
Was, I think ours is what you do. Would it be good?
Yeah. Well, Mike's the guy to check with on what our experience has been. I have a water on demand in my house. I tried it at home. We've been really pleased with it.
The other thing for us to get is that there's extra costs on how much it uses. That it can be, we have a boiler in our system. It's a boiler that heats up the water for all this. And on the air conditioning, it's just a evaporative cooler. So it's really cheap on that end of the HVAC. So even though it's efficient for an air conditioner and a heater, a furnace, a gas furnace there instead of the boiler, there is more cost going to be accrued because we're using the AC. So in the yearly expenditures for the counties, they will have to bill more for the electric and the costs.
Let me give you a pencil and one other financial resource that may be available to you. I can't believe I didn't put it on there. Anybody heard of Rocky Mountain Power's what they call FIN Answer? F-I-N, Answer. We had them come in. Well, we had the engineering firm, do an analysis. We had them do an energy audit of the county jail building. And we were able to take advantage of this Rocky Mountain Power program to help us reduce our cost and get reimbursed a little bit on their energy efficiency side of things. The Rocky Mountain Power FIN Answer. I don't know where they came up with the name, it doesn't make any sense, but it's an energy efficiency thing. just do a web search on it or contact your Rocky Mountain Power representative and ask them about it. I don't know if it's still in place or not, but it's something that helped us with getting our cost down for replacing these units.
Questar also offers stuff too.
Who does?
Questar.
Questar, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. I know they have a robust residential program. They probably have a commercial one as well. So make the phone calls. Again, they may be aware of some funding programs for you that I haven't mentioned here. But Rocky Mountain Power, thin answer. So we submitted our energy audit to them. That's the other thing we had to do for this ARA funding was to show the gain in efficiency. So we had, it was another paper thing. I had to go back for like 2 years of utility bills and summarize our energy usage at the jail building in a little spreadsheet, and then show the auditor used that information to show the efficiencies that would be gained and how quickly the money spent would be returned in increased efficiencies. And what was our number? It was like 8-9 years, and we saw that payback come into the year.
We use that financier in our indoor running arena to replace all these old halogen lights with fluorescent lights.
Okay.
Now, if I remember correctly, it's been several years, but I think the whole project cost us $24,000, and they gave us $12,000, and we saved about $1,000 a month on our power bill. So within a year, that thing had paid for itself.
You do the research, and then you've got a pretty good case when you go to your elected officials, county commissioners, or the board, whatever the case may be, and just give them the numbers and say, this is what we can save over the time. Go ahead.
Some of the things that, like for that power thing, some of the things aren't figured in. Lights, I've been with it 30 years now, but the lights that we used to have, the big round lights, for the last 20 years, these new lights, these little teeny.
Was it the T8s or something?
They only last for about a year or two. So, and they're $10 each. The old light bulbs were $1 each, so.
The other problem you got is the T12s they're doing away with your new regulations. And they've come a long way with the new T8s, and they're even now down to T5s.
But the T12s are going,
T12s are going.
so it's kind of like an ammunition thing.
Well, you're gonna have to be out on T12, all this, you won't be able to buy those. They're phasing them out.
John's been looking at something, the fluorescent lights, right?
I'm sorry?
The fluorescent lights, those are LEDs.
The LEDs.
Anybody been messing around with LEDs? What's,
We put a phone call lights, I remember the LED lighting, it's powder gold, that's at 50%.
has anybody seen those?
I've been putting them in my home because,
What did it cost up front?
Johnny's got
Yeah,
some
they're
experience.
expensive.
yeah, I've been putting them in my home because you get a rebate from Rocky Mountain Power. And by the time, they're very expensive when you put them in. They're much brighter for my hallway stairwell lights and things. They're much brighter. They don't get hot, so that they don't heat up the room. And with the Rocky Mountain refund that you get on them, they're just a little bit more than buying the old light bulb, and they're rated to last 15 years before you have to replace them. It's really a great
Our
deal.
experience with that in my office, you can't see.
So there's not enough light in the
No, you
LEDs?
can't see good enough when you're with the computer and your papers and stuff like that, you can't see. We have extra lights to turn on.
Okay, so some pros and some cons. They're more expensive, but you run the numbers. You get your calculator out and see how much it costs, how much you think you're going to save, and see what the numbers tell you. But, are we trying some in our building?
No, we did. The one bad thing about the LED fluorescent lights is they shine downward, and with a regular fluorescent, you get the radiant light back from the fixture itself. That's why you're getting a little
Yeah, you
less
can't see
light
nothing.
than
Yeah.
what you could be. Shining straight down, they are brighter than your fluorescent, but your recoup time on that, because of the expense of them, is many years. Versus because of the expense of them. Down the road, they may become cheaper for.
It's like anything else. The technology will advance, the manufacturing will be more efficient, or more players will be involved in it, and the price should drop. So something to keep in mind for you is to those LEDs.
I'm just curious to know if any of the towns in here are working with Siemens Corporation. They'll come in and do an audit on the buildings to see where they can save you money.
Anybody working with Siemens?
I worked with them when I was a director at Syracuse, and they come out and did the audit for us. And when they initially came back, it was up to a 10-year payback. And so we worked with them and worked through all the details and ended up getting it to where it was an 8-year payback. And we, I think we did 650 streetlights and changed them out to LED.
Yeah.
And then purchased all of Rocky Mountain Power streetlights. So Syracuse owned and operated all their streetlights, which was on different power grids as well.
Feel like it was worth what they did?
Yeah, they were good to work with and knowledgeable and.
Another resource might be some of your vendors, especially some of the ones on the state contract. Well, you're seeing on the state contract, and then a lot of them are partnered with Rocky Mountain Power. Codale is one that we use, and they'll actually do your energy audit for you and supply you with the report that you need to show.
Codale is it?
Codale is that.
Royal, rec center right now, they're using Royal's fund to drive them out.
Yeah, a lot of
This
those.
is Royal Engineering?
Royal.
Oh,
A lot of those state contract vendors, they're great for things like that. And it doesn't cost you any more to do it. A, you're saving because you're buying your product cheaper on the state contract, and B, you're getting that extra service. So, good resource.
Okay, good comment, great, thank you. So the contract needed a source of funding. Any other questions or comments? I'm kind of wrapped up in.
Hey, Malcolm,
John?
there's 6 counties, Association of Government down in Center County. There's 6 different counties that are associated there in that. And I think they've got like 5 county association of governments in different places.
Yeah.
Aren't they basically solely supported by government grants and things of that nature?
AOGs?
Yeah, the AOGs.
AOGs, they're funded by the counties, they're member counties, they'll administer federal programs, state programs.
So they do carry a lot of up-to-date material on grant, the ones that are actually giving out grants for government entities.
Yeah, again, that's where we first found out about ARA funds, was through our Association of Governments. So we made phone calls and got started. And the root canal was, I'm over it now. Our therapist says I'm healed. I mean, the paperwork was a pain in the neck, but you just get through it. You just do it and get through it. And whenever they called you up and say you haven't done this or have you done this, you haven't done this, you say, okay, I'll be glad to do that. And then you hang up the phone. Do you know how much time that's going to take me?
I highly recommend anybody, or I need more grants, you get somebody that knows what they're doing, because like in the federal, they want all their jobs where they belong. If anything isn't where it belongs on a grant, it isn't turned away for somebody else. So you need to have people, there's an art for that, that's what they got here.
Okay, I think that's it. Appreciate your attention and turned out to be an okay subject, didn't it? Everyone's eyes are still open. Thank you.